There's obviously with the ET concept as well, agenda is always raised. So if there are ET species interacting with humans on this planet,
yes,
why are they doing it? There's been talk that we're in a free will zone and an exclusion zone where we shouldn't be messed with, we shouldn't be allowed to develop at our own pace, under our own steam. And there's been talk of alien races like with David Icke and so on, that there are aliens controlling this planet. So there's a lot of different people talking about a lot of different agendas, and indeed there's the story of the nuclear silos in the States that were all turned off.
Oh yes, I know that one. Yes, yes.
When alien craft flew over them and they turned off all the nuclear silos. There's also talk that that's indeed when the interest in this planet peaked, when we started exploding nuclear bombs all over the place, because it's thought throughout the galaxy this planet is too valuable to be lost to idiot humans blowing up nuclear weapons here, there and everywhere.
Too valuable to be lost. Of everything you said, that's the most important piece that I feel I want to zero in on. Too valuable to be lost, as far as the extraterrestrial races are concerned, is absolutely right. And it's not that the Earth is too valuable to be lost, it's that the Earth and everything within it, very much, including us, is far too valuable to be lost. The extraterrestrial races have got a huge vested interest in us. And this is how I understand things at the moment. There are some less evolved extraterrestrial races that really don't have our best interests at heart and regard us to be as a source of nourishment, would be about the simplest way to put it. And the nourishment thereafter is energetic. So it's the ultimate human conceit, which is that we are the crown of creation and that all the animals and the plants are here for us to consume, and nothing is capable of consuming us. And it's one of the biggest of cosmic jokes, because actually we, in some senses, are a slave race that is brought up rather like cattle, and we're fed on. Because if we're food, just have a look at this idea, we're food, then we're food not on a physical level. They don't go around eating human beings. There's absolutely no point in that whatsoever, because they're a much more subtle level of energy. And the key word is energy. So if we're going to be food for any being at all, if we are, we're going to be energetic food. And it appears that the form of energy which we are capable of providing, which is very satisfying for this particular race of beings, is fear. So fear is the energy which is fed on, and this is why people like Icke and all the rest would say the media is saturated with images of fear and images that provoke fear in human beings, because we are food. So one of the biggest steps that you can take in your own personal evolution is to break away from the addiction to fear. In other words, stop watching endless media footages about war, horror, violence and all the rest of it, because all that's just feeding these beings that don't have our best interests at heart. We're just food, they're just sucking it all up. One of the best ways to understand this is a lovely film called Monsters, Inc. What I would say is that the mainstream media consists of pure brainwashing and enabling us to simply be fodder for these beings on the one hand, and on the other hand, evolution and enlightenment material is scattered liberally throughout. So if you want to watch Monsters, Inc., watch the whole film from beginning to end, and don't take it as fiction, take it as an allegorical way of explaining what happened. And this is what I like about Jesus and the Bible, because Jesus explained things to his disciples by creating parables. So Monsters, Inc. is a parable for the modern day human being to understand how potentially we are all food. So that's one side. Let's put that to one side for the time being, and let's look at the other picture. There are other extraterrestrial races which clearly do have our best interests at heart and are willing to work very, very hard indeed to help to keep us alive, to keep us going, and prevent us from making some of the most disastrous mistakes that we could make. So if you take into account the fact that there are beings which are just feeding on the fear, And as someone who'd actually grew up in those times, I grew up in the times of the nuclear threat. I lived in a country, I lived on a planet where everyone on the planet in the 1960s was frightened of a nuclear annihilation. Because at that point it seemed to be inevitable. Because what we were doing, and I say we, I mean the governments of the world, some governments of the world were producing more and more atomic and hydrogen and neutron and cobalt bombs. The nuclear arsenal stockpile was just getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and nothing was being done with it. So the obvious thought is, well, hey, we're not very bright as human beings, so someone's going to do a stupid, dumb-ass thing, and they're going to press a button, and we're all going to go. This is what we were brought up. We were brought up with this awareness that we had limited time. So this is why the extraterrestrials who had our best interests at heart chose to go incognito, chose not to be seen, chose to be low profile, below the radar. And also those that definitely did not have our interests at heart also equally wanted to go below the radar. If you're feeding off a slave race, the last thing you want them to do is to become aware that they're a slave race. You want them to think that they've got complete sovereign responsibility, that they're completely in charge of their own destiny, captains of their own soul, and that you don't exist. Because that way you can carry on feeding ad infinitum with ad nauseam, can't you? So basically the ones that were feeding of us didn't want us to know about their existence, and the ones that were doing everything they could to help us in our evolution felt that we weren't ready, which is why I feel that for the last 50 years or 60 there's been a blitzkrieg in the media to do with extraterrestrials and aliens. They've done so much to prepare us, and there's a guy called Dr. Stephen Greer who talks about disclosure as if it's an inevitability, and perhaps the guy's right. But I think what people fail to realise is they thought disclosure was going to be one day the 6 o'clock news, aliens are real, bingo. Disclosure isn't something that's going to happen on the 6 o'clock news on one broadcast. I would say we're in the middle of the disclosure process, which is taking decades, because that's the level of evolution that we're at, as we take a long time to take on a really new concept of how things are.
Yeah, I mean, I always think of it as well. 100 years in cosmic terms is the blink of an eye.
It's nothing. Drop in the ocean, exactly.
So, you know, I think things are changing rapidly at the moment. It's just when you look at them in human years and that kind of time frame, it appears to be very slow and slow moving, but actually it's moving quite quickly.
And I'm so glad you pointed that thing about human years, because you used the phrase human years automatically. ET years, ET time is a much, much longer perspective. They're talking about, I won't even give you a figure, but it's very, very, very many thousands of years that they're working on. And non-physicals, even broader still. So there are the majority of beings, the vast majority of all beings in the universe are operating on a vastly larger timescale than we are. We're on a very, very diminished timescale. And if you look at simply recent history, I say recent history, the last few thousand years, like biblical times and such like, there are records of people living far longer than they do now. So it's just a strange paradox. On the one hand, we're being led to believe that this is the only advanced civilization there's ever been, and before then it really was sticks and stones and flint knives. Absolute load of bollocks, by the way. There have been many, many civilizations far more advanced than this throughout history on this planet over many, many, many years. And there's an interesting figure which is quoted in terms of the extraterrestrials which don't have our interests at heart. I think it's 300,000 years. It gives you an idea of perspective of time. Time scales are very, very different when you leave behind the human dimension. So for me, 10 years is a long time as a limited physical being, but outside it's...
I think that's what a lot of people find when they use ethnogens and different plant medicines, is that time is something completely different to what it is in a normal state of consciousness.
And I love the fact you've brought in the entheogens, because I want to then add the shamanic practice, because if people get a glimpse of this with the entheogens, then they take it so much further through shamanic practice. So to me, one of the biggest jokes about the media is the concept of the time machine. Now, why would you want to build a time machine? What on earth would you want to do that for when you are actually your own time machine? Every person who's ever done any shamanic training discovers it's possible to travel in space-time instantly. And the shaman makes the deal. The deal is so simple. You don't carry any luggage with you. You leave your physical body behind and you cannot carry any artifacts with you. So long as you accept that deal, you can then travel to anywhere in space-time. And this is what I do routinely for my clients. When I'm doing work for my clients, I might travel vast distances in space and vast epochs in time in order to retrieve, heal and return the soul part to that client. So there are so many things the way we're taught to look at things, which is things are actually the opposite. So why build a time machine if you're prepared not to carry any luggage? You don't need to. If you're prepared to leave your body behind, your consciousness can go anywhere. And it's with the thing which is most ridiculed in mainstream education. The child is looking out the window and the teacher is talking, and what does the teacher say? The teacher says, "Wake up, pay attention." Actually, that child was just going into their active imagination, and they were leaving behind the limited confines of the classroom, and they were just starting to do their journeying work, the birthright of all human beings, and in our mainstream education, smacks right out of them.
And just going back to what you were talking about, because I think this would be a really important point for people, is that the potential for an alien species that's feeding off our emotional energy and feeding off our fear.
Yes.
If people are concerned about that, and I mean, you've only got to look at the climate of fear and how sort of afraid parents today are compared to parents when I was younger in the 80s, and I'm sure when you were younger whenever that was, Keith.
Yeah.
You know, I'm sure there's you can see that there's definitely a stronger fear of things like paedophiles, murderers, being robbed, youths running the streets causing chaos. You know, there's a general climate of fear.
What you're saying is they've amped up the fear, they've increased it exponentially.
Yeah.
And this is true, because in the 1950s and the 1960s, children got sexually abused, and they got physically abused, and they got experienced to emotional abuse. This is true, this happened in those times. And there was a climate of concealment. So if a child experienced these things and approached an adult, they were told they were making it up. That was the kindest response. The most unpleasant response would be more abuse. So the children learned very rapidly to shut up. And now, as you say, today we live in a climate where it's the exact opposite, that parents are frightened of their children being subjected to horrific experiences every moment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's the real fear. And I think just in general with all the terrorism that's being purported throughout the world, and there's a real sense of fear which is almost creating a lot of anger and aggression in the world as well, and a lot of negative emotions. What practically can people do to make sure they're not being fed on and giving?
So this arrived this morning, and this is going to be part of my answer, this package. What we can do is we can tune in to the present moment, and the easiest way to do this is to become consciously aware of your hands. That's the first step. Then as soon as you become consciously aware of your hands, be aware of the fact that they're tingling. They are, aren't they? They're tingling, right? That's the energy I'm aware of in my hands. I'm now doing the same thing with my feet. I'm consciously aware of my feet. I'm tuning into a tingling sensation in my feet. Now all I do is I allow the tingling and the awareness of the energy to spread all through my body. I'm now corporally fully aware. When you are in a state of fear, your corporeal awareness has gone, and you're actually in the future or in the past. You've lost your connection to the present moment. Because if I'm frightened my child is going to be abused, I'm in the future. If I'm frightened that my child was abused in the past, I'm in the past. But right here, right now, my child is playing and having a groovy time with their toys or whatever. That's fine, so I'm actually totally okay. Yeah? So, therefore, this is what arrived this morning. And it's a book, and it's called Guardians of Being, and it's one of the books by Eckhart Tolle, which is particularly designed to help us to tune into the present moment, because the seat, the centre of your being is not your brain, it's your heart. The centre of your being is your heart, so as soon as you become aware of your body, this enables you to become aware of being in the present moment, and this helps us to tune into our heart, which is the core of our being. And the heart is the repository of love, and you then feel love for the child, love for the present moment, and you've diffused this situation of being somebody's fear food. That's literally the way you do that. That's literally the way you do it. You can stop being a being's fear food by becoming tuned into the present moment. As soon as I'm tuned into the present moment, which begins with corporeal awareness and ends up with my awareness of my heart, I am not food for any being. My little tap has been switched off. No one can take any food from me now because I'm in the moment, I'm fully aware, and I'm tuned into my heart. That is how I do it. So everyone can do this at all times. Now this is not the one I was hoping for. I ordered 2 books by Eckhart Tolle. The other one is a children's book. Apparently a children's book can be read in 10 minutes, so rather than wading through The Power of Now or A New Earth, which are great books, it's possible to short circuit all that. Get the children's book, get the information straight in there for you, because your heart is the repository for love. Love trumps fear every time. It's like playing a game of cards. The ace of trumps in the game of cards, which is human life, is love. And that's how we trump fear every time.
And what would you suppose, and maybe you know, maybe you can guess, or maybe you have no idea, in a hypothetical situation, if all 7 billion humans on the planet, all at once, tapped into this?
We don't even need that. The beauty is the 100th monkey principle. The 100th monkey principle has proven, using orthodox mainstream science, we don't have to wait for 7 billion. There's a species of ape, and these apes eat tubers from the ground. They find out where the tubers are, they dig them up with their hands, and they eat them. And there was one ape that was by a stream, and the ape dug up the tuber, and instead of putting the tuber straight into the mouth, put the tuber into the stream and washed the mud off and started eating. And it tasted good. Other apes watched this. And in time what happened is other apes decided to give it a go. Instead of eating the muddy tuber, noticed the other one had washed and was keeping on washing every time, washing the tuber, going back to the stream. Oh, what's in this thing about washing off the mud? Let's try it. So, washed off the mud. Wow, that tastes better. Within an incredibly short period of time, this method of cleansing the food before eating became a universal. It spread. So it's called the 100th monkey principle. We actually need a relatively small proportion of the world's population to wake up. In fact, you'll be shocked at how small it is. It really is a small number. Compared with the billions of our total population, a really small number is required to do this. And once we reach that critical mass, that's it.
And I suppose if you take the subject of ETs and ETs feeding off us and put it to one side,
yeah, it's good to do.
The idea of not living in fear and living in love is beneficial whether you believe in ETs or not.
Yeah, let's make it even more extreme. I like to go for extreme. Let's say the whole ET things are complete utter bollocks, and there ain't any such things. Totally ignored, don't exist. When you're in a state of fear, just remember how that feels. Be aware of how that feels. Times in your life when you've been in fear, how that feels. And then remember the state of love and how that feels. There's no contest, is there? One is so much more obviously desirable than the other.
Would you say it's always an individual's choice whether they're in a state of fear or love?
I would love to be able to concur with that, but I have experience and know that that's not true, because human beings have been programmed, and a lot of our programming is possible to label as positive, a lot of it is negative. So I would say most people I've ever come across have been exposed to a lot of severely negative programming, and that really does take time to deprogram. It takes time to release the holes. of those things. And I actually know of someone who came on the retreat last year and came on the retreat and then had the universal soul retrieval, and with those two experiences plus some more months has completely transformed the anxiety, is no longer imprisoned by anxiety, but spent the whole life up until that time with that being the pervasive issue. And that's the thing about Eckhart Tolle. Eckhart Tolle spent decades in states of horrific anxiety, and one day he found himself on a park bench and the anxiety completely went. He tuned in to presence, he calls it presence, which actually is awareness of the present moment, and out of that arose bliss and his heart exploded into love. So I would say that the human journey is that you've been programmed into fear, thoughts and belief systems which have become automatic, and that can result in long-term anxiety, which can then result in long-term pharmaceutical medication. And then through your awakening experiences, through wonderful things that happen, through synchronicities, then you can deprogram. And for some people it takes real effort, and some people it takes a lot of time. Other people are luckier.
When you say programming, for people that might not understand, are you referring to environmental conditioning or something more genetic?
I love the word conditioning. I'm referring to the conditioning that you receive through your parents, through your teachers, and even more so through your friends. And that's a fascinating subject in itself, because there's a field of shamanism called Toltec shamanism. Toltec shamanism states this following premise: all human beings have a foreign installation implanted into them, and it is implanted into them through parents, teachers, friends and peers, and this is what they call the domestication process. The domestication process is what enables a person to function in normal society. The word normal is quite appropriate there. So this foreign installation is what I call the rational mind, and the rational mind is a wonderful servant and a horrific tyrannical dictator. So that's a way to look at it. So what the Toltec is saying, we're all programmed through our upbringing, and our miraculous task as human beings is actually to, should we choose to do so, to deprogram ourselves and become tuned into the possibility of love and living in the present moment.
And that's what it's all about, really, isn't it?
That's what it's all about. We all start in the darkness and we awaken to the possibility of light, and then we are able to be in the light at first for only very short periods of time, and then gradually we reach the point where we can be in the light all the time.
Because I suppose it's hard when you, and I've experienced it myself, when you have that almost awakening process and reconnect with love and let go of your fears, let go of your angers and your hatred and all those kinds of things. And it feels amazing, it feels incredible, and you feel like a new human being.
Yes.
And then slowly you go back into society, into the normal 3D world, and the little things, the conditioning, it starts to chip away. Because I mean, if you imagine, it's 30 years of conditioning you're trying to undo, and it's very easy to slip back into the old habits, the old ways of thinking. So I completely understand what you're saying by it's almost moments in the light before we can fully come into it.
I want to give you a really trivial example which happens frequently on retreats. Someone comes on a retreat, has these fantastic experiences, completely opened up to love, and all of a sudden on a Sunday morning they can't find their phone. They can't find it. Where is it? Where is it? And the next thing they're right back into the fear. Oh my goodness me, did I drop my phone outside? So it can sometimes be gradual, and sometimes it can be just like that, just one little thing.
And you're right back in.
And you're right back into the fear again. Oh my God, has it been stolen? Is there a conspiracy?
And it's the question, after everything you've just experienced, how is your phone still hold so much importance to you? Why does it matter so much?
It's beautiful. It's a lovely allegory of how we are.
Yeah. It is. We are crazy, aren't we?
Well, now this is a word that I'm becoming more and more, my curiosity is piqued by this word, because what I find is when people come to retreats and have totally extraordinary experiences, massive awakenings, they immediately label them with the word crazy or the word insane, They're on autopilot. They don't even know they're doing it, but I
Yeah.
watch them. I listen every time they do that. So I invite you as an interesting practice to notice every time you use the word crazy or insane. Because actually, maybe it's the other way around. And I want to throw in this one. This is one of the principles, one of the core principles of shamanism is as follows. Nothing is as it appears to be. So we turned the whole thing on its head. If the mainstream society says this is good for you, you might want to look at that again. If mainstream society says this is bad for you, you might want to revisit that possibly. Because nothing is as it appears to be. It's a useful shamanic axiom to play around with.
Which loops us back round to the ETs again, doesn't it? It's the idea that if there are ETs, you should be able to see them with your own eyes.
Exactly, exactly.
No,
Or you should be able to kill them with a gun. If you're an American, for example.
No, I think that's loops around perfectly.
Perfect. I think we've got it. We've nailed it.
Yes.
It's in the can.